It's the wild beating hearts in the biosphere to which we connect most deeply. Humans seem to have an innate need to have animals around us, and this is not a new trend. In ancient Egypt, pharaohs were mummified alongside their cats and dogs. In ancient Greece, dogs were kept in healing temples for their perceived ability to help cure people of illness. From the rise of birding among millennials and wildlife watching in general, to the fact that pet ownership has outpaced total household growth in the United States in the last decade, it's obvious that we want animals around us. But why? In his book Our Wild Calling, Richard Louv explores the connection between humans and animals. He writes that not only are humans lonelier and more isolated than ever, we're also experiencing a phenomenon called species loneliness. Essentially, humans evolved in a community of other species. We were creatures living among other creatures, and it's only recently that we've started to live lives removed from nature. Species loneliness expresses that we are not meant to be alone or separated from other species. This goes beyond companionship and includes the importance of all animals in our need to feel fulfilled. On a basic level, this makes sense because the well-being of animals around us is directly linked to our own survival and well-being. This aligns with the biophilia hypothesis, which is the idea that humans possess an innate tendency to seek connections with nature and other forms of life. In speaking of nature, Robin Wall Kimmerer extends our innate tendency to seek connection to nature to our use of language. Kimmerer explains that her native tongue, Potawatomi, uses the language of animacy. This means that all forms of life are referred to as subjects, not objects like they are in the English language. For example, in English, we call animals it instead of he, she, or they. Kimmerer acknowledges that by linguistically including animals as beings, this is one way that we can reconnect ourselves to the natural world and the animals around us. Eco-psychologists have suggested that our conceptions of self, as inherently separate from the natural world, have negative outcomes on the well-being of humans and ecosystems. Perhaps these words can be medicine for them both, so that every time we speak of the living world, we breathe out respect and inhale kinship, turning the very atmosphere into a medium of relatedness. So we want to feel connected to the community of other life forms in a time of increasing species loneliness. But we also see in animals a wildness that maybe we ourselves have lost. Animals are embodied in a way that we humans rarely experience in the 21st century. We're so busy living in our heads that when we watch wildlife, it's almost jarring to see how present and in tune they are with their own bodies and the earth around them. In her essay, A Circle of Heartbeats, Julia Corbett writes, "We envy animals' complete possession of their place, their deep knowledge of it, congruent with and rooted in their surroundings, with skills and abilities perfectly honed to it." Beyond witnessing animals' deep attunement to nature, humans have looked to animals for millennia as guides and teachers. From trickster characters like Raven and Coyote, to animals that are revered for their intelligence and strength, cultures throughout history have recognized animals as examples for ways of being. The good news, according to Louv, is that public concern has been growing for both wild and domestic animals. In the past 4 decades, the only 2 animals whose favor has declined are raccoons and swans, but people even feel pretty kindly toward them. The reasons for the increased concern and care of animals points to the loss of biodiversity, as well as the improvements in science of animal cognition. These 2 factors lead us to feeling empathetic towards animals. But it's not always easy living in a world where the lines between domestic and wild animals are blurred. In 2018, I took a group of people out on tour in Alaska. We watched 6 rambunctious fox kids playing and wrestling for about 20 minutes in the open tundra. When we left, a woman on my bus announced that she hates red foxes. They have them in Ohio, and they ate her chickens. With the destruction of habitat, wild animals are adapting by moving into suburbs and cities. Oftentimes, they have nowhere else to go. In a world where biodiversity is plummeting, we have some decisions to make regarding the needs of animals. In Letting Grizzlies Be, Steve Prim says that we should aspire to live in such a way that adds one's own tiny weight to tilt this life toward surprise, wonder, and an autonomous wild world, away from control, predictability, sameness, and scriptedness. It's our decision whether or not we add our own tiny weight toward an autonomous wild world. It's our decision whether or not we value animals, whether or not we value ourselves enough to prioritize the protection of species beyond our own.